Hello and welcome back to the channel for another breaking news update. And Neils Frederiksen will not be the new Watford head coach. Huge developments in the past 24 hours, and he has now signed a 2-year contract extension with Lech Poznań, who have won back-to-back league titles and will play Champions League football next season. What is my initial reaction to this? Well, I am slightly surprised actually. We of course had various UK media suggesting that he was in advanced talks with the club, and to see really a 360 on this now is pretty astonishing. Usually when Watford get to that stage with head coaches, it gets over the line quite quickly. But to see Frederiksen opt to stay is really interesting. Fair play to him is what I'll say. It's clearly very attractive, the opportunity to play Champions League football at a club he's been at for a few years now, and to arguably step down to Watford would have probably been a sideways or backward step in his career. I felt actually that if we were a recently relegated Premier League club in the first or second year of parachute payments, that is a more opportunistic job for a manager to take, right? You have more funds, you can bring in players of a higher quality. Watford aren't in that situation anymore. And also as well, you have to remember, we are competing with a club who are going to be receiving Champions League revenue next year. And we are kind of middle of the road Championship, second division in England. So there's a huge disparity there, most likely, in the money that was on offer. And also for Frederiksen himself, not to offend older viewers watching, but he is in his mid-50s. He probably wants a bit of stability, and given our reputation not only in England but around Europe since our relegation from the Premier League in terms of the number of head coach changes we make per season, he probably, to be quite frank, didn't want the stress of it all. So disappointed, because out of all of the candidates we have been linked with, he did look to be one of the more promising, and also his reputation was quite high around Europe as well. There was reports prior to his extension and prior to the Watford rumours that there was clubs in the German Bundesliga after his signature as well. So big developments here, and Watford will have to go to alternative candidates. Who will them names be? Of course, as I say always, only time will tell. But my preferred ones would be someone like a John Dow Thomason for the work he did at Blackburn previously and his track record of developing young talents, and also Gerhard Struber as well. He had a great spell at Barnsley in 2019 and 2020. Really good football, entertaining on the eye for supporters in the stand, and that's when his reputation was really sky high. It's not gone as well for Struber since then. He just lost his job at Bristol City to former Watford man Roy Hodgson. But those two names for me is the type of manager I would look to get. I know a lot of you have sent me messages and said, James, we should go after Russell Martin and Scott Parker, and I absolutely see what you're suggesting there. I understand why you would like to bring them to the club. But like with Frederiksen, I think those two managers specifically, and Scott Parker more so, would probably be targeting, one of these Premier League sides coming down, a Southampton, a Wolves, for example. I think that's what a Scott Parker would be after, and the same could be said for Russell Martin as well. So big developments. Frederiksen hasn't chosen Watford, and we'll have to see what happens in the next days ahead. Of course, Scott Duxbury set out quite a vague initial timeline for the appointment. At the time of the Watford podcast coming out, he suggested it would be another 7 to 10 days before we receive confirmation. And we're probably at that 7-day mark now. So I would expect potentially another name to come out by the end of the bank holiday weekend. Keep your eyes peeled on social media. And finally, Watford have officially published the released and retained list. This has been hotly anticipated across social media. Lots of impatient Watford fans awaiting this to come out. And we spoke actually at length with Adam Jury from the Watford Observer about it here on the channel just a few days ago. He was privy to some early information that we discussed, and he was pretty accurate actually in his summary. There's a couple of alterations here on the list which I'll go through. The released players largely consist of academy players. Toby Adeyemo, probably the standout there, and he will be forever remembered in Watford folklore for his goal against Blackpool that secured us the 3 points that day. I remember it well. We had an injury-ravaged spell, and we called upon Toby Adeyemo to save the day off the bench, and what an impact he made. Great scenes in front of the rookery end, and I've met him as well in real life. A real lovely, calm guy, and I hope he has a really successful career in the professional game moving forward. And the same can be said for all of the academy lads that have been released today. It's not easy at all, of course, having the football prospects being taken away from you, but I would hope they all have sufficient quality and good enough characters to go elsewhere and prove Watford wrong. So Toby Adeyemo, the biggest name, I would argue, departing the academy. Hayden Barrett, Ian Camger, Joshua Keys also in there. Miles Roberts also leaving the club as well. He's been out on a few loans now, the goalkeeper, and it's a shame it didn't work out for him at the club in the end. But I think the pecking order for the goalkeepers is pretty much sorted out for next season. I think it's clear that Egil Selvik will remain the number one as things stand, unless there's significant interest in him after the World Cup. Nathan Baxter, of course, an adequate backup, and it does seem like Alfie Marriott is now third choice in that position. So no longer a pathway for Miles Roberts at Watford. It seems he's well liked by the clubs he's been at on the various loans, and I'm sure he will find success elsewhere as well. The two big departures, though, in terms of released players is Tom Ince and Nampalys Mendy. Now, with Tom Ince, I'm not surprised to see him leave. I think it was about time he departed the club, actually. He's given us some brilliant moments, don't get me wrong, but they were quite fleeting. And I did feel that when we needed to call upon him as one of the more senior pros in the squad, he never really delivered when we needed him to, which is a shame. I think if Watford had signed Tom Ince 5 or 6 years ago, when he was in his prime, that would have suited us a lot better. But what we got was the Tom Ince towards the end of his footballing career. And from what I understand, I believe he has been doing his coaching badges actually for the past couple of seasons as he prepares for life after professional football. So maybe another move for Tom Ince to a club lower down the leagues, or potentially heading straight into coaching. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. The other departure, which I am slightly disappointed with, I've got to say, is Papi Mendy, Nampalys Mendy, our nippy Senegalese midfielder. He arrived back in the summer, actually, initially on a free transfer, and started off quite brightly under Paolo Pezzolano. Wasn't used at all by Javi Gracia. He was in that bomb squad, if you remember, with Jeremy Petrie, doing individual training outside of the first team setup. And then he came back into the fold, actually, with Ed Still. And I quite liked Papi Mendy. I don't think he really put a foot wrong. Yes, the physical aspect of his game isn't great, but we knew that when we signed him. We knew he was quite a small player, but I did feel he offered enough to potentially stick around for another year. And when the club are making it clear that they're pushing for experience moving forward, I did feel he could be one of these characters we could lean on for maybe an additional season. Clearly Watford think otherwise, and he has left now, as confirmed by the club today. But yeah, for me, disappointed to lose Papi Mendy. On the renewed contracts now, and this is where it gets particularly controversial, the club have now confirmed that Kayembe has signed for an additional year, and the same applies to Tom Dele-Bashiru and Jack Greaves. Jack Greaves I'm not fussed about at all. I'm really happy that he's staying, and next season is massive for him. I truly believe he has the quality to break into the first team and do a Ryan Andrews of consistently starting matches for us, but what he has to do is try and stay injury free. I think that has set him back in the past couple of years in terms of his first team development, and a massive year ahead for Jack Greaves. We knew from Adam Jury's report that Kayembe was set to stay at the club, and I've spoken about this at length before. He's a kind of a 50-50 player is what I'll say. Some people love Kayembe and some people hate the guy's guts. I'm somewhere in the middle, really. I think he is a useful squad player, and if just used as a squad player, I'm more than happy with him staying. The problem is, of course, he's been starting matches consistently for a very, very long time now. And a major critique of Kayembe's game is how long he takes on the ball. He doesn't scan enough, and he holds on to it too much. He doesn't release the ball quick enough, especially when Watford are on counter attacks. But look, I can see why they have done it. He's heading to the World Cup with the DR Congo. If he has a good spell there, that may increase his value. And who knows, these are only 1 year additional deals. They could very well still be sold this summer or looking further ahead to the January transfer window. Watford aren't blessed with huge funds. As we know, we're not ran by a country. We don't have a kind of massive financial backing from numerous shareholders. We have one owner in Gino Pozzo, and whether you agree or disagree, we have to be quite savvy in our player trading models. So whilst I disagree to an extent with the Kayembe extension, what the club have done ultimately is secure the value on that player for an additional 12 months. And as I said, if he does have a good tournament, there may be other teams interested in securing him even this window. Tom Dele-Bashiru, that was the surprise. When we spoke to Adam a few days ago, the suggestion from his understanding was that Tom Dele would be leaving Watford this summer and exploring opportunities elsewhere. And from what the club have confirmed today, he has signed another 1 year extension. And to be honest, I can't see him being here next season personally. I think this is again to retain his value within the transfer market. And if there are potential suitors for Tom, whether that's in Turkey where he's been on loan or back here in the UK, Watford can of course demand a fee for him rather than letting him go for nothing. So I can see the common sense behind those extensions. Whether you agree or disagree with it though is a different matter. But Kayembe, Tom Dele and Jack Greaves all sticking around for an additional year. Thanks for watching today. I really appreciate your time as always. And hopefully when I join you next, we'll have confirmation about the next Watford head coach. Bye-bye.